Happy Sabbath. I'm very happy to be here to speak to this congregation. You don't know what it means to me. It means an awful lot. And I want to begin by saying in Volume 9 of the Testimonies, page 19, it says, Seventh-day Adventists have been set in this world to be watchmen and light bearers to the world. And one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is Isaiah chapter 60, verse 1. And it says, Arise, shine, for the light is come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon thee. We are to be light bearers reflecting God's image and his glory to the world. In fact, this morning as I was thinking about how I would open up this presentation, the Lord directed me to a couple of paragraphs in the book Steps to Christ, and I want to share this with you. You see, in 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 3 and 2, the Bible says, through the Apostle Paul, that you are manifestly declared to be the epistle of Christ, known and read of all men. So it's talking about us being an epistle or a living word, a living book to the world. And in this book it says, he sends you a letter to the family, to the village, the street where you live, Jesus dwelling in you. Desire to speak to the hearts of those who are not acquainted with him. Perhaps they do not read the Bible, or they do not hear the voice that speaks to them in its pages. They do not see the love of God through his works. But if you are a true representative of Jesus, it may be that through you, they will be led to understand something of his goodness and be won to love and to serve him. Christians are set as light bearers on their way to heaven. They are to reflect to the world the light shining upon them through Christ. Their life and character should be such that through them others will get a right conception of Christ and of his service. So, Seventh-day Adventists are to be light bearers to a dying world. In Isaiah 60, verse 2, it says that gross darkness has covered this earth. And I want to read something to you because I believe that we are not only to reflect God's glory and his character to the world, but I believe that Seventh-day Adventists are to be in a great physical condition, to proclaim also a health message to the world, because we're seeing a widening problem that's taking place, and our message is more ripe today than ever. It's called a widening problem. In a historical first, there are now as many overnourished people as undernourished people in the world. Here's the recipe for obesity on such a global scale. It says take technology, cars, washing machines, elevators that reduce physical exertion, add television and video games, stir in the intensive marketing of candy and fast food, and you have the makings of an epidemic. In countries where the food supply has been unstable, people are getting fat despite far less abundance than in the United States. The implication: newly industrialized nations in Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and Latin America may develop even higher rates of obesity-related health problems than in the United States of America. We're to be watchmen and light bearers to the world, and God gave to this church a very unique message, what I spoke about last night, the three angels' messages. And he has also blessed this church with the light in regards to health reform. At a time where the world is suffering in a historical first, the greatest crisis in health care we have ever seen. In fact, it says in North America, states with the highest obesity rates, Mississippi, Alabama, are in the South. The more affluent and outdoorsy western states of Colorado and Utah have the lowest. In South America, as Latin America becomes more developed, supermarkets stocked with processed foods have become the norm, rising from 20% of food retail during the 1980s to 60% in the year 2000. In Europe, candy, fast food, and sweetened cereals account for more than half the food ads in 10 European Union nations. It says in the UK, snack food consumption rose nearly 25% in 5 years. In Africa, in some parts of Africa, obesity afflicts more children than malnutrition. In Asia, in Shanghai, roads once filled with pedestrians and cyclists are now congested with cars. Kentucky Fried Chicken opened a drive-through restaurant in Beijing in 2002, with more to come. And Oceania, Pacific Islanders have always valued hefty physiques. Now their shift away from local foods to a high-fat Western diet has made them among the world's fattest people. So we're facing a health care crisis globally now. And God has given this church a very unique message, a health message. But there's a problem, fellow Seventh-day Adventists. There's a problem because not all of our people are following this beautiful message that God has given us. In fact, many reject it, to be quite honest with you. So today I want to ask you to bear with me. I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, caught a plane to fly over here to Baltimore with a friend, and I come with a lot of compassion on my heart. And I want to speak to you today with love about a health message that I believe that our world needs to rise up and embrace today, because the world is dying all around us, and we can be those light bearers. When I talk to Bliss about coming here to speak, people always ask me, what do I charge to come? I charge nothing. I have 5 beautiful children. I have a lot of work to do. And I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to catch a plane to come here and to talk to you because I love you. And I really want you to hear what I have to say. As I said last night, I'm going to give you a lot of evidence in regards to a diet that's killing the majority of Americans today. And I'm going to give you a diet that God instituted in the beginning. And I'm going to present these two to you. I'm not going to try to coerce anybody to do anything. I'm going to simply share the information that God has given to me. As my ex-wife birthed our first child, I began to look for what is the best diet for that little baby. And the more research that I did, the more I began to find out. But one thing that God did as He was leading me into the truth, I started to find prophecy in the Bible, and it intrigued me very much. I was an ex-bodybuilder. I had 18-inch-and-a-half arms, 52-inch chest. I could bench press 400 pounds at 185 pounds body weight. I was freaky strong without any steroids. Wasn't taking any testosterone. I had enough from being Italian. All right? But I was very intrigued with diet. And then as I was working 5 years at Juvenile Hall, I also met a friend there named Willie Douglas, who introduced me to Bible prophecy and handed me a book called The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey. And I read it, and I was intrigued with prophecy, or the foretelling or predicting of what is to come. Now let me ask you a question. Would you like to know the future? Do you think it could help you in life to make certain choices to prevent disease, to prevent financial hardships, to prevent domestic battles or problems? How about in a horse race? How about in a poker game? What if you knew the future? Yeah, I could win some money. Well, God also wants us to know the future, and He's blessed a church on this earth with a very special prophetic gift. And He did that because He loves you. See, It's something, prophecy, something that's declared by a prophet or a divine prescription, and the Bible's filled with prophets and prophetesses, isn't it? You have Elijah the prophet, Miriam the prophetess, Isaiah and Deborah, Amos and Huldah, Malachi and Anna, Daniel and Philip's 4 daughters. In fact, Amos 3:7 says, "Surely the Lord will do nothing, but he reveals his secret unto his servants, the prophets." So Jesus prophesied, did he not? Here we find in Matthew 24:37, 39, and 42, verses 39 and 42, "As the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away." And then he tells us this is what's going to happen before the end of the world. In fact, he says, "So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Watch therefore, for you know not what hour your Lord doth come." So in this verse, he's giving us an illustration that life will be going on as usual before the coming of the Lord. You've heard this scripture, "Beware of peace and safety, for sudden destruction comes." Well, they're eating, they're drinking, they're marrying and giving in marriage. But in the book of Luke, where we read the same prophecy, he says it a little differently than Matthew. It says, "And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and the cares of this life. So the day come upon you unaware." Again, it's showing us that this is going to be like a surprise. The coming of Christ is going to surprise many people. And so the devil knows that he needs to lure us and to deceive us and to tempt us to live lives that are contrary to what God says. And it says specifically, "For as a snare shall it come upon all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth." All of them on the whole earth. He's trying to deceive. Global obesity? Would he use food? Would he try to deceive people into thinking that it really doesn't matter what I eat as long as you can chew it and swallow it? You know, this is interesting because surfeiting means an overabundance of food. And drunkenness means an overabundance of drink. So in the last days, prior to Christ's coming, the devil is using another snare. He's taking food and he's putting it in the form of taste sensations and junk food and high fat, saturated foods filled with excitotoxins and chemicals and pesticides. And he puts it on every street corner in America, luring people like a snare, because he knows his strongest hold on man is the appetite. And he seeks to stimulate your appetite in every possible way. So what you're eating can have a chemical response in the brain like THC and marijuana. Did you know that? Releasing pleasure, chemicals, mood-elevating chemicals in the brain. See, people don't understand when you eat chocolate, you have this happen in your brain. And people don't crave chocolate. Many are addicted to chocolate and don't even know it. So the devil knows anatomy. He knows physiology. He's using food as he did in the Garden of Eden as a snare. And he's putting it on every street corner knowing that the more of this junk you eat, the more chances he has of physically destroying you. Now, God calls a church into being, gives them a special message, a health reform message, and says you are to stand as light bearers and watchmen in the world because gross darkness and obesity is covering the earth. I think I want to pay attention because I don't want to be lost because there's some supernatural being who was once called Lucifer or once called, Lucifer, and now he's Satan. And he's going around as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And this is going to affect every man on the planet and every woman. What does the United States say? This was some of the information that I recently gathered, that the Food and Drug Administration says the average American be carrying 5 to 22 pounds of feces in him on a given day. That's a pretty heavy statement. You know, I was reading something in a book here, a magazine this morning. Let me grab this one for you. It was very interesting. People don't realize this, but I made a national infomercial called The Almighty Cleanse. And I talked about cleansing the body because 50% of Americans don't have a bowel elimination on a given day. And the medical profession says there's no medical reason to have a bowel movement every day. So this was an article called The Constipation Files. And in here, I just want to read you a couple points in regards to constipation that you may have never thought of. It says it will increase your risk for colon cancer. That was in the European Journal of Cancer 2004. And the pressure in the bowels caused by constipation stimulates the growth of cancer. Cell Proliferation 2004. Also, long-term constipation is also linked to psychological distress, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and sexual dysfunction. The Journal of Gastroenterology and Hepatology. And toxic substances may be absorbed from the bowels, a condition called autointoxication. And autointoxication has been blamed for a long list of health problems, including depression and serious skin problems, according to the American Academy of Dermatology, 1986. Constipation can cause depression, anxiety, serious skin condition, cancer, the proliferation of cancer. Maybe that's a good reason to eat a high-fiber diet. Secondly, colorectal cancer is the second leading cause of death from cancer in America, and males now have a 47% chance of getting cancer. Females, 38% chance of getting cancer, and heart disease will kill 1 out of every 3 Americans, and 100 million Americans now have high cholesterol. Global obesity will increase by 40%. There are currently 1.6 billion overweight adults in the world, and that number is projected to grow by 40% over the next 10 years. At least 300 million of them are clinically obese and is a major contributor to the global burden of chronic disease and disability. 2/3 of Americans are now overweight. 15 million have diabetes. And diabetes among Americans in their 30s has increased 70% in less than 10 years. And this is a new study I just put up that I found last week, that America's number 1. And it says, according to a new study released by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, 3/4, that's 75%, of Americans will be obese or overweight by 2020. That's in 10 years. That puts America in first place. We won! We won! We won. For the world competition to see which nation can create the most obese population. America has become the fattest nation in the world. And we're looking at a condition that not only shortens lifespan, but you're going to see sets you up for some of the most major chronic diseases that we're suffering from in this country today. Were the dangers of the standard American diet predicted over 2,000 years ago? Jesus said there would be surfeiting and drunkenness in the last days, and it would be a snare. And in National Geographic, in this article, it talks about obesity, and it begins to tell how it affects the liver, it affects the heart, it affects your arteries, it affects your female organs, that it will increase chances for heart disease, diabetes, liver disease, colon cancer, osteoarthritis, and stroke. In other words, the heavier you are, the more likely you are to get one of these other major diseases that are killing Americans by the millions. So, in Acts chapter 2 it says, and it shall come to pass in the last days. Are we living in the last days? Okay. It shall come to pass in the last days, says God, not Danny Vierra, God, that he'll pour out his Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Isn't that heavy? That God's going to move on his Spirit to prophesy, to foretell the future, to prevent his church from becoming disabled and defective in the last days, when they should be standing as watchmen and light bearers to proclaim a message that's unique to the world. And all my servants and all my handmaidens I'll pour out in those days of my Spirit, and they shall prophesy. The Bible tells us specifically that the last day church will have this gift of prophecy. In fact, in Revelation 12:17, it says, and the dragon, Satan, was wroth with the church, or the woman, and he went to make war with the remnant of her seed, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. For the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And I want to ask you a question. Has God left his church without prophetic guidance in these last days? No, he hasn't. Should we listen to the prophetic guidance? In 1864, many years ago, at a time when doctors were recommending smoking tobacco for the treatment of lung diseases, think of that. Doctors are recommending tobacco for the treatment of lung diseases, and somebody comes and writes in this year that tobacco's a poison of the most deceitful and malignant kind, having an exciting, then paralyzing influence upon the nerves of the body. Multitudes have fallen victims to its poisonous influence. They have surely murdered themselves with this slow poison. Those who acquire and indulge the unnatural appetite for tobacco do this at the expense of health. They are destroying nervous energy, lessening vital force, and sacrificing mental strength. I had a man who came to see me with lung cancer, and he had a pack of Marlboros in his front pocket. And I said, he's got to be kidding. And I said, you're here for lung cancer? He said, yes. And I said, what's this? He says, and I'm not quitting. I said, then I'm not going to see you. And he said, that's not a very Christ-like attitude. I said, can I have your cigarettes for a minute, please? And I said, Surgeon General warning, smoking causes lung cancer. What do you want me to do? You're not going to quit. What do you want me to do? And he said, you know, you Christians, you're quite a group. And I said, why is that? And he says, you're not free. You don't have liberty. You don't smoke. You don't drink. You don't listen to certain types of music. And I said, you know, you have the wrong definition for freedom and liberty, brother. I said, can I have one of these cigarettes? What? And I put it in my mouth. I said, do you have a lighter? I'm sure you have a lighter. Can I have your lighter? And he gives me his lighter, and I flicked it on, and I brought it about an inch to my face. And I said, let me tell you something about the definition of freedom. I can light this cigarette right now and smoke it. I have that choice. You quit right now. I said, who's the slave? You're in bondage, and you're calling it freedom. You can't stop. That's freedom? He goes, I've never heard it that way. I said, right. Besides, the commandment says, thou shalt not kill. And at the end of the appointment, which I did on donation basis, he pulled out a checkbook and wrote me a check for $100 and said, that's the best sermon I've ever heard. And he quit and never smoked again. But anyway, those who acquire and indulge in a natural appetite for tobacco do this at the expense of health. They are destroying nervous energy, lessening vital force, and sacrificing mental strength. Do you believe that? Well, what if I substituted articles of food that destroy nervous energy, lessen vital force, and sacrifice mental strength? Will you quit? Will you quit eating it? If it's going to do to you what tobacco does to you? Let's look at tobacco quickly. Nearly 1 in every 5 deaths is caused by tobacco use. Smoking is responsible for 90% of lung cancer deaths in men, 80% in women. 3 million die each year worldwide from smoking. It costs $1 billion a week in healthcare costs. It contains more than 3,000 chemical substances. And this drug addiction also causes coronary heart disease, stroke, artery damage, peripheral vascular disease, emphysema, bronchitis, impotence, loss of bone density, stillbirth, sudden infant death syndrome, and many types of cancer. And even the secondhand smoke causes diseases in those people that are inhaling it. Why would anyone want to smoke? I don't think, you know what I really think? They want to die. This is just a slow way of doing it. Now, if you were the devil, would you use tobacco as a snare to addict people that they cannot quit the habit? I think he would, wouldn't he? This says, tobacco using is a habit which frequently affects the nervous system in a more powerful manner than does the use of alcohol. I smoke, but I don't drink. It's worse. And then it says, it binds the victim in stronger bands of slavery. There's that word again. They think they're free because they can smoke. Then does the intoxicating cup. The habit's more difficult to overcome. Body and mind are in many cases more thoroughly intoxicated with the use of tobacco than with spurious liquors, for it is more subtle poison. Here's what I learned about the devil. He just doesn't jump out and say, gotcha. He slowly deadens your mind. Remember that statement. Whether he's taking articles of food, whether he takes tobacco, whether he takes over-the-counter prescription drugs, whether he's using alcohol, whatever he's using, medical marijuana, he's slowly deadening your mind. Because he knows that's where God's going to seal you, is in your forehead. A settling into the truth. Clarity of mind, a battle for the mind between God and Satan. Let's slowly deaden their mind. And what does God say? Let's renew their mind. No, let's kill their mind. I picked this up at the American Cancer Society, and it said, if what happened on your inside happened on your outside, would you still smoke? Warning, dying from smoking isn't pretty. But the tobacco industry hires beautiful movie stars and puts them on the cover of Cigar magazine, even though we know that increased smoking increases mortality rate. In 1865, her insides read like the morning paper. In the book How to Live, she linked birth defects with the use of poisonous drugs. In 1890, she declared that thousands are born deaf, blind, diseased, idiotic because of the parents' indulgence on alcohol. In 1890, she wrote that men are destroying reason by liquor drinking. In 1900, she said, the result of liquor drinking is demonstrated by murders, yet the liquor curse is legalized and works untold ruin in the hands of those who love to tamper with that which ruins not only the poor victim but his whole family. Then in 1905, she linked the use of alcoholic beverages with the destruction of the sensitive nerves of the brain. Do you get this? Alcohol, the brain, the nervous system. Tobacco, the brain, the nervous system. Pesticides and chemicals, aspartame, NutraSweet, excitotoxins, lesions in the brain, mad cow disease, spongy holes in the brain. You getting the picture? Let's get their brain, their mind. Alcohol is linked to virtually every negative aspect of society: suicide, violent crime, birth defects, industrial accidents, domestic and sexual abuse, disease, homelessness, and death. It causes loss of brain cells, cirrhosis of the liver, cancer, heart disease, pancreatitis, high blood pressure, peptic ulcer disease, reflux disease, anemia, gout, chronic fatigue. And a study at Harvard School of Public Health showed a 50% increase in the risk of breast cancer among women who drank as little as 1 glass each day, and a 70% increase among those who had 2 glasses. That's not very good. I'm not going to sit here being a Mediterranean Italian and say, have that glass of wine, it's good for your heart. Have the fresh juice of the grape, it's good for your heart. And then it says in another study that researchers at the National Cancer Institute reported a 50% higher risk for women who drink any alcohol at all, and as much as a 100% increase in the risk for those who had 3 drinks or more per week. Now that's 1987, so let's go to February 24, 2009. Something more current. It was called the Million Women Study. And it said even relatively low levels of drinking on the order of 1 alcoholic drink per day increases a woman's risk of developing cancer, said the lead researcher from the Cancer Epidemiology Unit at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom. In 1906, regarded as a prophet by many and a woman with deep spiritual insights by others, she had seen the destruction of San Francisco pass before her mind's eye as early as 1902, when she warned, "Not long hence, these cities will suffer under the judgments of God." This is confirming her prophetic gift. San Francisco and Oakland are becoming as Sodom and Gomorrah, and the Lord will visit them in wrath. This is a warning. A warning. On April 16th, a mere 2 days before the earthquake, she wrote, "During a vision of the night, I stood on an eminence from which I could see houses shaken like a reed in the wind. Buildings great and small were falling to the ground. Pleasure resorts, theaters, hotels, and the homes of the wealthy were shaken and shattered. Many lives were blotted out of existence, and the air was filled with shrieks of the injured and the terrified. 490 city blocks destroyed, 250,000 homeless, 1,500 injured, property destroyed at the rate of $1 million every 10 minutes. And that was that day. Fires up to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, a prophecy had literally been fulfilled. And now look what she writes in 1906. 6 months after the earthquake, she wrote this. "For a time after the great earthquake along the coast of California, the authorities in San Francisco ordered the closing of all liquor saloons. No intoxicating drinks were sold. In the calamity that befell San Francisco, the Lord designed to wipe out the liquor saloons that have been the cause of so much evil and so much misery and crime. And yet the guardians of the public welfare have proved unfaithful to their trust by legalizing the sale of liquor. The people of San Francisco must answer at the judgment bar of God for the reopening. I wouldn't want to be living in San Francisco. Modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. I think it's ready to go underwater pretty soon. I did go there and pass out many, many great controversies after an earthquake we had years ago. And many people were frightened and scared. In 1868, the liability to take disease is increasing tenfold by meat eating. In what year? 1868. The same lady who predicted the earthquake, the same lady who wrote about tobacco, the same lady who wrote about alcohol and its effect on the mind is saying the liability to take disease is increasing tenfold because of eating meat. That's not my words. These are not my words. Worldly physicians cannot account for the rapid increase of disease among the human family. But we know that much of the suffering is caused by the eating of dead flesh, 1901. In 1870, could you see the nature of the meat you eat? Could you see the animals when living from which the flesh is taken when dead? You would turn with loathing from your flesh meats. The animals whose flesh you eat are frequently so diseased that if left alone they would die of themselves. But while the breath of life is in them, they are killed and brought to market, and you take directly into your system humors and poisons of the worst kind, and yet you realize it not. Downed animals. This is very interesting because of factory farming. I gave a lecture once in front of many, many people. Two things stood out to me in my lecture circuit that were profound. One, after I spoke at Tacoma Park in front of 1,000 Adventists, one lady walked out and said, she had tears in her eyes. She said, "You spoke the truth today, and that's it. I'm selling my dairy." Enough. We cannot control the bacteria. We're losing. In another setting, I was doing a cooking school, and at the end of my presentation, a man stood up and raised his hand, and I called on him. He was a federal meat inspector. And I thought he was going to challenge me on some of my information, and my teacher always taught me accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. Do not speak it if you can't prove it. And he said, "This man's telling you the truth. Every Tuesday in Tulare County, I believe it was, that I have to allow the selling of animals that are dying. As long as they are breathing, I have to import this into my Mac. But this rolls and shows you this cow being drug into a trailer, being sold at market for like $100. Because it's still breathing, it's allowed to be put in the human food chain. In 1905, a 105-year-old prophecy. She said flesh was never the best food, but its use is now doubly objectionable since disease in animals is so rapidly increasing. And the USDA orders the largest meat recall in U.S. history. The Agriculture Department has ordered the largest meat recall in its history. Now, this is after Clinton and Kessler from the FDA met and said, we're not going to feed these animals anymore to other cows. We can't put these dead, dying, diseased animals into the feed to other cows anymore because of mad cow and other issues. This is after that because nobody's policing it. Have you heard of recession? 143 million pounds of beef, a California meat packer's entire production for the past 2 years, because the company did not prevent ailing animals from entering the U.S. food supply. About 37 million pounds of the meat, cuts, ground beef, prepared products such as meatballs and burrito filling went to school lunch and other public nutrition programs, and almost all of this product is likely to have been consumed by the children. The chickens, They're transported long distances and subjected to great suffering in reaching a market, traveling for weary miles over the hot, dusty roads or crowded into filthy cars, feverish and exhausted, often for many hours, deprived of food and water. The poor creatures are driven to their death that human beings may feed on their carcass. And millions of people in the U.S. fall victim to foodborne illness every year, and we blame meat inspectors and insufficient cooking. But did you know that just in Arkansas, 2.6 million pounds of chicken manure become breakfast for beef cattle? You can't feed the waste of an animal to another animal without that animal suffering, any more than you can feed the waste of a human to a human and expect you to thrive with good health. This is a very interesting article, and this morning I was reading some of it, and I want to show you something here that I hadn't caught before, but I did this time. Dirty birds. Consumer Reports. Dirty birds. If you eat undercooked or mishandled chicken, our new tests indicate you have a good chance of feeling miserable, because Consumer Reports analysis of fresh whole broilers bought nationwide revealed that 83% harbor Campylobacter or Salmonella, the leading bacterial causes of foodborne disease. And here's what I hadn't seen before that I'm going to read you now. Think premium brands are safer? Overall, chickens labeled as organic or raised without antibiotics and costing $3 to $5 a pound were more likely to harbor salmonella than were conventionally produced broilers that cost more like $1 per pound. So your organic chicken was worse. Number one on the list, Tyson Foods. Then I check this. In the largest national analysis of contamination and antibiotic resistance in store-bought chicken ever published, we tested 525 fresh whole broilers bought at supermarkets, mass merchandisers, gourmet shops, and natural food stores in 23 states. Then I put Campylobacter was present in 81% of the chickens. That's not very good news, would you say? So the headlines tell the story. Meat dish served at party causes poisoning. Rare illness hits girls. More children dying from burgers. Cow AIDS, no threat to the U.S. Bad meat linked to E. coli. And death causes British panic over mad cow disease. So you get E. coli in a box. You can eat at Murder King or the Golden Arches of Babylon. Yummy chicken McNuggets. The paste, they're taking the chickens and they got this new process called advanced meat recovery where they take the chicken and they strip it to the bone. And it says the paste becomes the main ingredient in many hot dogs, bologna, chicken nuggets, pepperoni, salami, and jerky. And the industry calls this method AMR, or advanced meat recovery. Once the chicken has been processed, it has to be soaked in ammonia to kill the bacteria, flavored and dyed, because people would freak out if their McNuggets were cream strawberry colored, which is actually the color of flesh and bone and blood. But watch the picture. One lady got that, a deep fried chicken head. Shouldn't say ooh. We eat every other part of them, don't we? We eat his kidneys, his livers, gizzards, the rear end, the breast. You pull it off the bone with your teeth, and you're chewing a dead bird. Anyway, so, why isn't... Just for the record, the Bible calls these abominations. Shrimp, crabs, oysters, lobsters. You know those delicacies we like, which I call the cockroaches of the sea, the pigs of the water. See, God said don't eat the pig. And there's Adventists eating pigs. It's the most disgusting creature you can eat. I mean, trichina worms. It doesn't sweat. You squeeze between its knuckles and its lymph system dumps all this junk, garbage out of its body. And these creatures of the ocean, well, let me tell you a story. I had one man, when I was lecturing on the unclean and the abominations in Leviticus, that he said, I fish for crabs for a living, and we found that the greatest catch for the crabs was early in the morning, right in the docks, and we discovered that the boats were dumping their toilets in the docks, and the crabs were eating the feces from human beings. Now, why would God say, first of all, let me say a word to you that I've learned to respect. It's called hygienic. God's into natural hygiene. He said, if you touch a dead body, don't touch another body for 7 days. And they were touching dead bodies and delivering babies, and the infant mortality rate skyrocketed because they were transferring disease and bacteria. He says, don't defecate in the camp. Don't go near a woman if she's on her monthly cycle. You have a higher chance of infection. God has laws of hygiene. This is one of them. Don't eat the flesh from unclean animals. It has to do with hygiene. Then we find that hot dogs increase leukemia and tumors, specifically brain tumors in children. And then she warned of transmittal disease in 1905. Is that mercy from God or what? We're going to get this deal called mad cow disease. And I'm going to warn you 105 years ago. Don't eat these animals. Disease is increasing tenfold. It's doubly objectionable that you can eat the flesh of an animal that may have cancer, tuberculosis, or other fatal diseases, and it can pass to you through eating it. Did she see bovine spongiform encephalopathy or mad cow disease? Did she see that cows were going to be eating cows? Did she see the cover of Newsweek? Did she see brain cells and the brain tissue being destroyed by prions, a freak of nature with no RNA, DNA? The infecting agent in mad cow disease that eats holes in your brain like a sponge? Did she see this article that says the U.S. government, the cattle industry, and many experts now voice confidence in the nation's firewall and say the risk to consumers is light? And then it continues. In truth, in other words, that's not true. Right? È vero in Italian. Truth. It says, America's safeguard and surveillance efforts are far weaker than most people realize, and many of the developing countries that now face the greatest risks, such efforts are non-existent. How many of the world's cattle are now silently incubating bovine spongiform encephalopathy? How many people are contracting it? The truth is, we don't know. I called Howard Lyman, remember? The mad cowboy who was on the Oprah Winfrey show that was educating her about mad cow disease and prions. And she made that infamous statement, I will not eat another hamburger. And the Cattlemen's Association got so aggressive in their lawsuit against her that she had to move her show to Texas to keep filming because the court battle was going on in that state. He stayed at my house. He's a friend of mine. He spoke at my health crusades a number of times. He checked to see if my telephone was bugged. And he said to me the other day on the phone when I called him, I said, Howard, you once made a statement that 1 in 1,800 cows in the U.S. is being tested for mad cow disease. Is this true? He said, Danny, it's a joke. It's more like 1 in every 750,000 cows. Nobody's testing. Then I put Dr. Carlton Gadusik, knew nothing of Scrapie when he landed in Papua New Guinea, but Gajusik, an American pediatrician and virologist employed by the National Institute of Health in Maryland, soon encountered something similar. A strange neurological disease was killing the 4 people of the country's eastern highlands, especially the women and children, and they called the condition Kuru. So they have a disease they're calling Kuru. They finally see that it's very similar to CJD or Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans. And they're tying this all together in their research, and they're finding again that we're eating the spinal cords and the brains. They talked about cannibalism and Kuru spreading from eating other humans. And we're eating the cows infected with bovine spongiform encephalopathy. And what's interesting is they now call it variant CJD. See the little V? And I learned something this morning because when they were doing their autopsies, the pathologist said CJD typically concentrates in the cerebral cortex, but this strain is in the cerebellum, another area of the brain. And the devil laughs, because billions and billions of burgers are sold at the golden arches of Babylon. And he's trying to destroy your brain. And I'd say this, hey, guys, did you know this? We need to get off all this meat. What do you say? Let's rally the forces. Let's proclaim the health message. Let's go out to the world and yell this from the rooftops. Anybody with me? It's going to kill us. Don't eat it. Did you know that cow brains are added to hamburgers? It was on the cover of USA Today. Spinal cords and brains are added to the hamburgers. Well, who was the one who kept warning us about this? Ellen Gould White was born in Gorham, Maine on November 26, 1827, and she was the most prolific American female author of all time. Mrs. White transcribed over 100,000 pages containing 25 million words by hand, and she's perhaps best remembered for her work in the field of nutrition and health, where some researchers and scholars still hold her in awe. And there's an amazing similarity between the visions of Ellen White and that of Daniel the prophet. We read in the Bible in Daniel chapter 10 that a glorious being appeared to him. A glorious being appeared to her. You ever taken the tour at Elmshaven in Napa Valley in California? You'll hear the stories of the room was lit up, and they'd think that it was on fire, but it was the angels that were singing to her. And then he lost his strength and fell into a deep sleep. She would go into a trance. He heard the voice of the being speaking to him, even though in this state. Same with her. He was strengthened. I recently went to Michigan and saw a replica of the 30-pound Bible she held at arm's length for 30 minutes. It was huge. And Daniel didn't breathe. There was no breath in him. She didn't breathe when in vision. They'd test her with a little glass, a little mirror, and there was no fog. It didn't fog over, and the candle didn't flicker, because God was doing something miraculous through this woman who said that there will be transmittal disease over 100 years ago, and it's in the United States, and they're not telling you, and they're not testing the cows, and you are running a risk big time by eating the flesh of dead cows. And you know this. You've known it for a long time. In 1905, people are continually eating the flesh that's filled with tuberculosis, and it's back, and it's on the cover of Newsweek, and it's putting people at risk, and it's a deadlier strain that could be more dangerous to the threat of our public health. She warned of the fish. Does Consumer Reports have to tell you that of 113 samples, 44% were contaminated with human fecal bacteria? Do you have to see more tumors on the face of the fish and the warnings of mercury toxicity? You want to get me started on mercury toxicity? in this book here, I read it on the plane yesterday on mercury toxicity. I'm glad I took all the amalgams out of my mouth years ago. Charmaine said, I need to insure my mouth. It's all gold. But when you begin to read about mercury toxicity, this article here was probably one of the best I've ever read. It just says, modern medicine prides itself in its miracle, high-tech, expensive treatments, but even wonder why it seems so lost in the effort to keep people from getting sick and needing those therapies in the first place. And they go through a number of toxins. And the reason why so many of us are sick because of toxic complications and mercury rising. How mercury affects health and what to do about it. Did you know Ellen White in Spiritual Gifts wrote about mercury? She says one day we're going to learn the effects that mercury has on the body. God gave me a dream. He sent 2 people to me. One didn't even know who I was and just came in and said, get the mercury out of your mouth. While I was praying for something to clear my mind, something was fogging my mind. I was eating, I was exercising, I'm drinking my water. But God sent 4 people, a dream, and 3 people to come tell me, get the mercury out of your face. Kind of quiet in here on that one. Don't want to move the mouth too much, right? We might see what's in the teeth. Anyway, you know, I had a lady just called me on my way here that has lymphoma and a large tumor in her neck. And I had a guy once who came with a large tumor on his neck. And I learned from Charlotte Gerson, you know what she told me? If there's cancer above the neck, look in their mouth. Root canals, amalgam fillings, look in their mouth. And this guy says, I have 2 right here in my front teeth. He pulled them, changed his diet and lifestyle. It shrunk. Gone. Animals are becoming more and more diseased, and it will not be long until animal food will be discarded by many besides Seventh-day Adventists. What's the statistics of meat eating in our church today? Foods that are healthy and life-sustaining are not to be prepared so that men and women will not need to eat meat. See, meat causes cancer. The more we know that the more animal protein you eat, the more saturated animal fat you eat, the more you increase your risk of these diseases. Cancer, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, colon diseases, obesity, kidney and liver disease, osteoporosis, and autoimmune diseases. We know this because of the book called The China Study. It's probably one of my favorite books that have ever come out on nutrition. And the study of epidemiology showing that our diet causes these major diseases. It's confirmed. This is one of the strongest supports out today of the benefits of a plant-based diet. And just to give you a little bit here, it says that in America, we eat about 80% of the 15 to 16% of our total calories comes from protein. 80% of that's from animal-based foods. But in rural China, only 9 to 10% of the calories come from protein, and 10% of the protein comes from animal-based foods. So we're eating like 80% in America, 10% in China, and they don't have osteoporosis. They don't have the colon cancer, the breast cancer, the high blood pressure, the osteoporosis, the diseases that we're seeing in America. And what T. Colin Campbell did, he showed that it's the diet that's causing the diseases. So what's the future for meat and our dairy and eggs? In 1902, she said, let the diet reform be progressive. Let people be taught how to prepare food without the use of milk or butter. Tell them the time will soon come. Friends, brothers and sisters in the faith, the time will soon come. No. Erase it. Delete. The time is here. No. Erase. Delete. We're past the time. We're way late. You know, when I read the book Deadly Feast by a Pulitzer Prize author, that they're watching to see in 5 years that possibly 200,000 British people may be dying a year because they're already infected with prions from mad cow disease, and it's incubating. It means it's not going to manifest for 20 years. Well, now we're going to be there in 5 more years, and they're predicting many people are infected with mad cow. There's no cure. They're going to die. And I'm so glad I read these statements when I became an Adventist back in 1990 and got my children off all animal food. And just because it's white and it's liquid doesn't mean it's safe. It's still coming from those animals. Let me tell you something. John McDougall, who I highly respect, Dr. Virgil Holtz, who was an epidemiologist, a medical doctor, also was a federal meat inspector, told me, both of them, that upward of 80% of the dairy herds in this country are infected with blood cancer. 50%, Dr. Virgil Holtz said, in my county, San Joaquin County, are infected with AIDS. See, it's not just a healthy piece of meat anymore. No, I'm telling you, she's telling you, he's telling you that you're living in the last days. There will be surfeiting and drunkenness. The devil's using articles of food again because he wants to destroy your mind. Look what it says. There will come a time when it's no safety in using eggs, milk, cream, or butter because the disease in animals is increasing in proportion with the increase of the wickedness of men. It's saying here, the iniquity of the fallen race, and the whole animal kingdom will groan under the diseases that curse our earth. 2001, they're now finding casomorphine 7, morphine-like compounds in milk that's causing schizophrenia and hyperactivity disorders in children. This was an interesting article that's now showing that recombinant bovine growth hormone produced by Monsanto, who also produces NutraSweet, is being pumped into these cows to produce more dairy products, and with more production of milk, more chance of mastitis and infection. Already the FDA allows 750 million pus cells per liter of milk. There's a lot of disease, there's a lot of infection, there's artificial hormones that cause breast, colon, prostate cancer. Confirmed. And up in the right-hand corner it says the reporters were forced to lie about it on Fox television. Here's 1,500 articles on milk if you don't believe me. Dr. Robert K. Kradjian, a breast cancer surgeon, reviewed 1,500 articles on milk recorded in the medicine archives, and children's problems were allergies, ear and tonsil infections, bedwetting, asthma, intestinal bleeding, colic, and diabetes. In adults, the problems were heart disease, arthritis, allergy, sinusitis, leukemia, lymphoma, and cancer, which we should avoid drinking diseased body fluids from cows. So milk has something for everybody. Leukemia viruses that cause cancer, immunodeficiency viruses that cause AIDS, bovine growth hormone, udder infections, antibiotic residues, resistant bacteria, prions, mad cow disease, estrogen, breast cancer, xanthine oxidase, heart disease, mycobacterium paratuberculosis, Crohn's disease, protein, juvenile diabetes, fat, adult diabetes, and cancer. Blood and pus, yuck. In 1870, great amounts of milk and sugar clog the system, irritate the digestive organs, affect the brain again. The brain. Anything that hinders the living machinery affects the brain very directly. And from the light given me, sugar, when largely used, is more injurious than meat. Sugar is not good for the stomach. It causes fermentation. This clouds the brain. The devil knows it. Let's take the milk, the secretions of the diseased cows, and let's mix it with the sugar and produce Haagen-Dazs and Ben & Jerry's. And let's sell those kids the burgers on one corner and sell them the ice cream cones on the other. Let's get their brain. The average American consumes 150 pounds of sugar a year, 75% is hidden, 500 nutrition empty calories a day from sugar. Here's what gets me about sugar. It depletes your B vitamins and leaches calcium from your bones. It affects the nerve and brain functions of the body, causes hyperactivity, attention deficit hyperactivity in children. It's a contributing factor in diabetes. 95% of the children in the country have tooth decay. Sugar decreases your body's ability to fight infection. It's going to paralyze your white blood cells. Sugar substitutes are harmful. Don't drink diet sodas. NutraSweet is worse. And it causes, when you have hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, low thyroid, rapid heart rate, depression, poor concentration. And this is the way we eat today. You know, and usually not many people sit next to me at potlucks. It's true. Not many. I spoke at Lancaster a few months ago, and a non-Adventist kept bringing me smoothies with kale and strawberry and live foods and juices and raw things, and I thanked her for being there. A diet chosen by our Creator. Grains, fruits, vegetables constitute the diet chosen by our Creator. You guys have been very patient. I'm almost done. These foods prepared in as simple and natural manner as possible are the most healthful and nourishing. They impart a strength, a power of endurance, a vigor of intellect that are not afforded by a more complex and stimulating diet. In grains, fruits, and vegetables and nuts are to be found all the food elements that we need if we will come to the Lord. In simplicity of mind, He will teach us how to prepare wholesome food free from the taint of flesh meats. You see, He gave us this diet plan in Eden, and we're going back to it. It's in the middle we're having the trouble. Isn't that beautiful? The promise of fruits and vegetables, a whole plant food-based diet, is proven to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. This is an interesting study I just found. A study in the American Journal of Epidemiology revealed a link between dairy and meat consumption and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yale University scientists revealed people eating diets rich in fiber vegetables develop low rates of lymphatic cancer, while the standard American diet rich in dairy and meat compromised their immunity and they were more susceptible to developing lymphomas. So the health benefits of a vegetarian diet, I put some of them. It lowers body mass, has no saturated fats, lowers blood cholesterol levels. Less deaths from ischemic heart attacks, lowers blood pressure, lowers the rate of type 2 diabetes, high in fiber for healthy bowel movements, high in vitamins, minerals, proteins, fats, and carbs, high in antioxidants and phytochemicals, lower rates of prostate, breast, and colon cancer. Diets high in fruits and vegetables help prevent cataracts, arthritis, and osteoporosis, healthier skin, nails, and hair, and increased energy and a longer life. That's why Charmaine's going to teach you tomorrow, and I hope many of you come. We're going to prepare all live food, but you're going to have pizza. You're going to have a mac cream instead of mayonnaise that's delicious, and even a fake salmon type dish. And we'll tell you what it's made out of later. But it's all living food because the electrical charge is in it to charge us. You see, at Bella Vita Lifestyle Center, I feed the people for 10 days, which I'll speak on tonight. Don't miss the next meeting. It's on the mind-body connection, and it's really going to help many of you that are suffering emotionally or may find out that your arthritis is related to the bitterness and the anger in your mind. And then Charmaine's going to share a testimony, and this evening I'm going to talk about natural healing and what we do at Bella Vita Lifestyle Center. But we feed them a live diet because it's the most powerful for rebuilding and healing. And see that statement, the doctor of the future will prescribe whole foods as medicine, cancer and diet. And at Bella Vita, we feed them rainbows. Lots of colors with all these powerful antioxidants and phytochemicals. We feed them all these beautiful foods, and their meals are therapeutic. And in case you're still skeptical, if I haven't made my case, I'll finish in 1909 in New York City. On one occasion, when in New York City, I was in the night season, called upon to behold building rising story after story toward heaven. The scene that next passed before me was an alarm of fire. Men looked at the lofty and supposedly fireproof buildings and said they were perfectly safe. But these buildings were consumed as if made of pitch. The fire engines could do nothing to stay the destruction. The firemen were unable to operate their engines. If you want to read this, it's in 9T, starting on page 11, 911. In closing, there's going to be a lot more sick people coming. We have been counseled in regards to health reform and also how to help the sick, to open wellness centers, because there's going to be a lot of sick people. The truth for this time, the third angel's message, we are Seventh-day Adventists. The General Conference is there. The President, Ted Wilson's calling for revival and reformation in the church. I come as a revivalist in health. I want to see the health message revived in the church, and it's going to happen individually. Reformation must take place before revival, and reformation is individual. It's to be proclaimed with a loud voice as we approach the great final test. This test must come to the churches in connection with true medical missionary work. We are told that in the time of trouble, there will be suffering ones, plenty of them, that will need help. So because of the need, but also for their own sake, they should, while they have opportunity, become intelligent in regard to four things: disease, its causes, prevention, and cure. That's why next year in September, I'm going to begin my first 30-day medical missionary school called Risen, based on Isaiah 60, verse 1, arise, shine, for the light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon you. You know, the word means irradiating beams of light to the world in darkness. And it stands for Remedial and Integrated School of Evangelism and Naturopathy. I want to train workers to go out into this world with this message, with the health reform, with the natural remedies to help many other people. It says you will find a field of labor anywhere. And the last slide, we've come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of medical missionary work. That's every one of you. Do you get it? All the world will be subject to the snares of Satan, all those in the whole world, and God has called a church into being. And every member should be a medical missionary worker. I'm just one who came out of Catholicism 20-some years ago, that heard this message, found these books, read what Ellen White had to say, believed it, and started running with evangelism all over the world, vegetarian restaurants, health and healing crusades with 2,300 people, half non-Adventists, radio for 12 years, television, infomercial, a Bella Vita Wellness Center, and now a medical missionary. I'm just one guy. I'm one man. There's a lot of you here today. Every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work. The world is a laser house filled with the victims of both physical and spiritual disease. Everywhere people are perishing for the lack of the knowledge of the truths that God has committed to Seventh-day Adventists. The members of the church are in need of an awakening, and that they may realize their responsibility to impart these truths Those who have been enlightened by the truth are to be light bearers to the world. To hide our light at this time is to make a terrible mistake. And then she quotes Isaiah 60, verse 1. Arise, church. Arise. Shine. The light has come. And the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. This is not a one-man job. I'm just one, I pray, of the 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee to Baal. But I'm going to do an altar call right now and an appeal. If my organ guy's here, maybe he can play something. But I just want to appeal that if there's anyone here who says, you know, I've seen truth today. I have these books. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, but I'm not doing the work. If there's somebody that the Holy Spirit's pricking today that would like to join me on my knees right here in front and say, you know, I want to change my lifestyle. I want to change the foods that I eat. Lord, I need the power because I've tried in the past and I've failed. But I need your Holy Spirit power because the evidence is clear. Maybe you're eating pork. Maybe you're drinking wine. Maybe you have an occasional cigarette. Maybe you're doing something else. But maybe your heart today is you want to be engaged in the work. You want to go out and tell people and warn them and not wait till thousands are dropping because of mad cow disease, more dying of cancer, more brain-wasting diseases, but have the courage and the resources to take this message to the world and be faithful to the calling. If you'd like to join me in prayer, and that's your prayer today, we got one more. Praise God. Oh, yeah. Thanks. Quit smoking. I smell it. Good for him. So anybody else wants to come join us, and we're going to close with a prayer. Have the courage. Every member of the church should be medical missionary. There shouldn't be one of you in the seat. Not one should be in the seat. Don't be embarrassed to come up. Be embarrassed to keep sitting down. The Spirit says, come. Listen to the Holy Spirit. Come forward. This may be your last chance. Praise God. More coming. Thank you. God bless you. God is powerful. I believe He's moving on His people. Time is short. You know the work you can do in this church to this community? You'd be Gideon's army. You know, I know many of us wait that one day we're going to give up that meat, but I don't think you're going to get more messages that are showing it so clearly. Maybe this is the day, today. Today's your day. Thank you. Any more? Well, I'm going to kneel down. If you can, would you kneel with me? Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, I am grateful for the response I see here in this room. I prayed hard, Lord, that your Spirit would fall on this church, that you would wake up many to come forward and give their heart and their life to you. Father, it's the food supply in this world today is getting more deadly and more dangerous. And you have given us light through Ellen White. And she even warns us in First Selected Messages, page 48, that the last deception of Satan will be to make her writings to have no effect in the church. And we're seeing that today. So, Father, I pray for this church congregation that does not happen. Because where there is no vision, the people perish. So, Father, I thank you for the power that you are giving us today from your heavenly throne, that you're touching many minds and hearts, Father. Forgive us where we have failed, where we have erred, where we have strayed away from the beautiful message on health that you have given us, and we have been following the ways of the world. But wake us up, Father. Oh God, wake us up and let us walk in a new path. Continue to bless these meetings through the day and bless this man, Father. Bless his cancer in his neck. Help him, deliver him from tobacco. Thank you for the courage to be the first man up here. Father, may he, as he reaches out and touches the hem of your garment, send thy healing virtue into his body, transform him, make his cells new. And may he practice the diet that I've been talking about and getting rid of these animal foods and seeing that lymphomas increase by dairy and meat. Father, bless him. Thank you for his example today. And bless his church. Thank you for bringing us here. And may the rest of the meetings light this place on fire. And may it be evident that the glory has arisen upon this church. And I pray this as a humble servant in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you.